This is the New American Media. Broadcasting to you, live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles, to be specific. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Agree to Disagree here at a special time here on the TNAM Radio Network here at thenewamericanmedia.com. I am your host, as usual. You can call me Brian Engelman. I've been called a lot worse. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a special program today, special time, actually. It's just kind of this is going to be a unique show today. This is the 50th. You know, it's not an anniversary. Those are usually celebratory times. You don't really celebrate moments like the JFK assassination, murder. It's a memorial, a 50th remembrance, not a celebration, not a party. It's a remembrance. It's a somber moment, if you will. And that's what's going on today. And we have special guest, coast to coast host. That is fun to say. John B. Wells, regular guest over here, one of our favorites. He's going to be joining us in just a second here. Real quick, if you haven't connected with us at the New American Media, I want you to do these couple of things. Go on youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. Click subscribe on our page. We would appreciate that. We got about 2.5 years of content, a lot of conversations with John, for example. And by the way, normally we do our program, The Unhappy Hour, right now. That's our Cleveland sports-centric show. And we're going to have special guest, NBA scout Zach Barris. He's going to join us. We kind of did a flip-flop. Thankfully, Zach was gracious enough to flip times with us. And so he was able to, he'll be coming up maybe in about an hour or so. But this is going to be the best time to get John B. Wells on the program. So we're you know, if you're tuning in looking for sports, sorry, you're going to have to wait just a moment. But anyhow, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. Go on Facebook, search The New American Media with spaces in between, and like the page. Please do that. We put different content on all these different mediums. On Twitter, please follow us. Do that on Twitter at American_media_, and check out our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. JFK. I'm a young man. I was not alive during this time. I don't recall where I was when this happened. The closest thing I have is do you remember the Challenger exploding? Do you remember where you were when you heard 9/11? You know, and I'm going to play something, but I would normally do this before I would get our guest on the phone, but I'm going to do this as soon as I get John on the program, because I heard this story. This is what happened when the Kennedy assassination news hit the Boston Symphony. Thanks to NPR for alerting me to this story yesterday. Yeah, but I actually cried in the car, just kind of imagining what it must have been like hearing this news the way they present it. But I'm going to play it as soon as we get John on the program, so let's just bring him in right now.
John Wells.
John, it's Brian with the New American Media. You're live on the air, sir. How are you doing?
Good to be with you, Brian. How's it going?
Hey, you know, it's going all right. And I was just leading the program off here explaining that we did a time swap for obvious reasons you're going to explain. Some stuff came up today. You were at the memorial, the remembrance, if you will, the 50th celebration remembrance down in Dallas today. But I wanted to play this, and I wanted to just kind of get your thoughts. I'm not sure if you've heard this. I caught this on NPR, and the first minute of this is just chilling. I want to play this for you, and I'm not, stop me if you've heard this one before, but this is conductor Eric Leinsdorf breaking the news of the Kennedy assassination when he was in charge of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. So if we can just take a listen to this real quick.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a press report over the wires. We hope that it is unconfirmed, but we have to doubt it, that the President of the United States has been the victim of an assassination. We will play the funeral march from Beethoven's Third Symphony.
And from there, John, it continues. But that sent chills down my spine. I'm not sure if you'd heard that one before, just the audible crowd gasping to remember what today is really about.
Yes, I had not remembered it until this moment, but now that you have played it again, yes, I remember hearing that actually. When it was broadcast, it was, it's just put a pall over the entire country, and I'll tell you that pall has been revived. It's interesting that it occurred on a Friday, and this 50th anniversary also fell on a Friday, and the whole city is just blanketed in a shroud of gray and mist and a bit of rain as well. It's cold, and it was actually not very pleasant down there in downtown Dallas, which is appropriate for the day.
And so tell us about that, John, because you ended up down there. Against all better judgment, you decided to go take a look for yourself.
Well, sometimes I'm a little on the grumpy side, and I'll just go, I don't see any reason to go down there and get mixed up in all of that. And that lasted about 60 seconds. And I thought, no, we're going. So we went down there. I went down there with Ty Bollinger and his brother. And we went to a place called Belo Park. Belo Broadcasting was the corporation that had Channel 8 television that was first on the scene, along with WFAA AM and FM and the Dallas Morning News, all under their umbrella. So we went to their little park. It's not a very big park. And after we got there a little early, it was supposed to be from 11 until 1. We got there about 10:30, and then Alex Jones showed up, and as he was expected and scheduled to do. And there were, I'd say 200-300 people. And this is what's so interesting about this. I spoke with Alex on, he was live streaming and everything else. I spoke with him on a couple of occasions, and then began the walk down toward the school book depository and the big red courthouse, and sort of adjacent to Dealey Plaza. Now the area was barricaded, and you had to have what's referred to as the Willy Wonka golden ticket.
That's weird. To
be able to be a part of this. Otherwise, you were not permitted on the premises. And they had a big screen, an enormous television screen erected, and I think it must have been the Naval Choir that sang "America the Beautiful." And Mayor Rawlings came out and was on the screen, and he delivered his little speech. I suppose it was a kind of a benediction, something. I don't know. We'll just call it a little speech. And I have to tell you that this was a very, very well-behaved crowd. But early into the situation, I just had a premonition that things were just a little bit too quiet.
Your spidey senses started tingling, is what you're saying.
Yes, just a little bit, and I thought, this is odd. And I said to one of the Bollingers, I'm beginning to think we probably ought to get out of here pretty soon. Right. It's like, no, it's all right. We'll be fine. I'm like, okay, well, it's just unnervingly calm around here. And the police look just a little bit too bored to suit me. They're not. They're just a little bit too relaxed. And so we went down and then after the speeches and after the America the Beautiful was sung, Ty just turned to me and said, "Let's go." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, let's go. We've seen it. We talked with Alex. We talked with a bunch of people. Let's go." So we turned and left. And not 5 minutes later, what happened was very strange. It appears the Dallas police removed the barricades because someone, probably Jones, had gone to a court and told them, "Look, it's not right, nor is it legal to deny the citizenry access to the commemoration and observance of the day." And apparently the judge agreed. Now, this is not confirmed. This is hearsay at this point. Okay. Because what did happen and what is confirmable is this. The Dallas police removed the barricades and allowed the citizens to come into the area, at which point the sheriff's department, aided by DHS stormtroopers began assaulting the people. Alex Jones himself got punched. Anthony Gucciardi got punched. I heard a report that he was actually knocked down and some officers began kicking him. However, this crowd, which was the model and picture of decorum, respect for authority, and compliance with civil law, did not resist, did not give them the provocation that they clearly wanted to probably fire on them. That would not have surprised me in the least.
Like at Kent State.
Had been alive for some time when those kids were killed at Kent State by National Guard. So don't think this stuff doesn't happen, audience. It does happen.
Yeah, I'm from Ohio. I wasn't around for that time, but that is lore in my backyard from where I grew up outside of Cleveland, that stuff happened, and it could happen again. And that's what you're saying. They were poking them with sticks, essentially.
Yes, they were. They just couldn't let it go. They just couldn't let a few citizens, a few well-behaved citizens, just exercise their First Amendment rights to hold up a sign saying 50 years of lies and this and that, because, look, everybody knows that Lee Harvey Oswald did not shoot the president with that old Mannlicher Carcano rifle. Everybody knows, who's done any research, that Mac Wallace's fingerprint was found in the sniper nest. Everybody knows that the president was hit from the front. Everybody knows this who's looked into it. And after having Roger Stone on Coast to Coast last Saturday night in his book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, you read this book and you're going to close it and you're going to be depressed and relieved in equal measure at the end of it. So I've said this many times on the air. We cannot heal. Oh, just let it go. Let this whole Kennedy thing go. Just let it go. No, we're not going to let it go. We need to heal. There will be no healing until we know the truth. Then we can heal. Then perhaps we can begin to forgive, but I don't think we'll ever forget.
Well, I think heal is also the word that you use for a dog when you ask your dog to kind of calm down. Heal, boy. Heal. No, but I mean, we can't heal when you had so many people in that generation, John. You had John F. Kennedy, you had Robert Kennedy, you had Malcolm X, you had Martin Luther King. Just for like a decade, it was every leader that spoke up was just getting weed whacked, you know?
Well, Roger Stone pointed out that 9 days after Martin Luther King said that he would throw his support in behind Bobby Kennedy, he was dead. And James Earl Ray swears and declares that he did not do it. And in fact, last night, I happened to be sitting on a panel with Jim Mars and Sevilla Ludkowski, the young man from We Are Change, and no less a personage than Judith Very Baker, who wrote a book called Me and Lee, and who is effectively in exile now. And Lee Harvey Oswald told her, these were words from her mouth, that he told her, I'm not going to make it. They're going to find me dead with a rifle in my hands. He did not shoot John Kennedy.
Now,
it's Brian, the damnable misery of it is, it's so corrupt and it runs so deep. It's just sickening to people who have any sensibility at all. The reason that we remember this is because if we did not know it, we perceive it, certainly from the effect. But all of the things that led up to the effect, which was the assassination, are so egregious, so completely amoral, so completely evil, that 50 years or no, we will not let this go until we are able to erect, hopefully, a granite monolith with the names of the perpetrators and, if necessary, try them posthumously, convict them, and etch their names into this granite slab so that their names can be remembered for generations in shame, which is the way they should be remembered. They shot John Kennedy in the head, but it hit the United States of America in the heart and broke it. And the most important part of this is that we are living in the circumstance which was once our nation. We are now living in a country of circumstance, And these circumstances began to grow when John Kennedy was assassinated. You are seeing the effect of what happens when the military-industrial complex takes over, as Dwight Eisenhower warned. This is exactly what he warned us about. We are living it now, and it began with the assassination. The plans began before it, but the actual machine began to turn when John Kennedy was assassinated.
So it was essentially a stack of dominoes getting clicked 50 years ago today, leading us through Vietnam up to 9/11. Yeah, I've only been around for about 3.5 decades, so I don't have as much perspective on this. But I will say that I did get a chance to listen to that Roger Stone interview that you did on Coast to Coast. And I'll give you a little plug here that if you guys, the listeners out there, don't have the Coast Insider, and I don't work for Premier Radio Networks or anything, but it's a couple bucks a month. I have it, and it's great to listen to. You get, 2 or 3 years of archive shows. I recommend to the listeners they check it out and go check out that Roger Stone interview, because I've never been fond of LBJ. I've seen photos, I've seen videos, I've read reports, I've read books, I've read a whole bunch of stuff. But to lay out a case for, 3 straight hours that Roger Stone did on your program the other day, he really painted the picture of, let's just be honest, John, who had the most to gain from JFK dying? Was it LBJ who became president? It's hard to argue anyone else had more to gain than the guy that took his spot. Could you sum it up for the listeners, what Roger Stone kind of had to say?
Well, LBJ was on his way to jail. It was provable that he stole an election in either, I believe it was 49, it was either 48 or 49. He stole the election, and his bag man, a fellow named Mac Wallace, I believe he was president of his class at UT, and just a brilliant guy, killed many people at Johnson's behest. According to Stone, LBJ was on his way to prison, and he had the most to gain from Kennedy being assassinated, and he had the most to lose from Kennedy not being assassinated.
No, okay, pause right there. The way you just summed that up, he had the most to gain by JFK dying and the most to lose by JFK living. That is a...
Yes.
Okay, that's an incredible statement right there.
The evidence is so compelling it cannot be denied. It really cannot. And again, people must not remain in this state of denial. I'm telling you, we have rolled the clock back to 1969. They just wanted to have their little soiree down there. And, oh, yes, we're very sorry that this happened to our president. They don't even know what they're talking about. They don't know, and if they do know, they don't care, because people worship money and power. Oh, you don't. I don't. The people in the audience, they don't necessarily. Probably one or two. But these are, as Stone described Lyndon Johnson, functioning psychopaths who are sadists, and they're in power, and we let them in there. And people say, well, how can we stop it? How can we stop it? An apparatus that's this big and this powerful takes a while to be created. It'll also take a while to dismantle it. It must start at the local level, everywhere from the PTA and your school board to your mayor, to your city council, to your state senators and your state representatives, your governors, all the way up to the executive level. People, if you want this country to survive in any form that resembles what you thought you lived in, you must become more politically active than you ever have in your life. You have got to stop being the fast food, soundbite, movies on demand culture that they have made so attractive we could not resist. Most of us just want to be happy. We don't want to walk around depressed or concerned or frowning every day of our lives. Well, you don't have to walk around that way, but you can make yourself smarter. You are being dumbed down on every level. Look, it takes a lot for me to say this kind of stuff. It does, because, again, I've said this many times. I'm a Missouri-born Texan, which means show me can turn into, now look, this is how it is, really easily. And now after I have been shown, now I have to say, look, this is how it is. Everything from your food, the contaminants in your water, the pharmaceuticals you are being prescribed and handed, and this stuff being handed out like candy. These things are all damaging your ability to think and feel. And you must not succumb. You must not be seduced by these things. The mainstream media is bought and paid for. Amber Lyon came on the program. I just kind of called out to her, and she contacted me, believe it or not, through Facebook. Which, by the way, I don't ever go on it. Somebody administrates it for me, and I don't even go on it. I really don't. But she said, John, I heard you're trying to get a hold of me, because I was kind of going, Amber, where are you?
No, John, you sent out your Amber Alert. Like they did in California.
I sent out an Amber Alert, yes, and that's good. And she said when she was at CNN and then left that CNN was paid to run certain stories and paid not to run certain stories. And look at it, look at how they all parrot each other. Fox News is the only one that deviates from what ABC, CBS, and NBC, and certainly CNN and MSNBC, which is crazy in my opinion.
It is.
But even they do not approach these things. Where is the mention of all of these problems with Japan and Fukushima? Oh, they'll hold on to the part from New Scientist that says, oh, this won't get in the food supply. Oh, it's no problem. Really? The sea stars are melting, not only on the West Coast, but also on the East Coast. Well, where's mainstream media with this? They're absent. They're silent. Where are they on the new evidence surrounding Kennedy's assassination? They're not there. They're absent. They toe the line. And if they don't, they'll be removed, along with the paycheck and the fame and everything that goes with it. They will not be recognized as responsible journalists. They're not journalists at all, with a few exceptions. I love Judge Jeanine. I love Judge Napolitano. There are several of them on there that I think are okay. I like O'Reilly even. I wish he wouldn't interrupt everybody every time they say something, but other than that, he's all right. But even he has some inaccuracies, talking about how he was on the front porch of somebody the day that he committed suicide, one of the conspirators in the Kennedy assassination. The only people that are fit to investigate are people who have no vested interest in the outcome, other than the salvation of their country. And I'm not trying to come across as some crusader, but I'm saying, I'm not going to be. There is more life behind me than there is in front of me. So it's either get it said and say it now, or just be one of them. And I don't want to be one of them. It's just exactly what William Wallace said in Braveheart. You'll live for a while, and you'll die. And you had a chance to bring freedom to your people and the future generations. You had a responsibility, and you walked on it. Well, you can't walk on it. Free health care for everyone. Nothing is free, fools. Quit buying that stuff. And my last opinion is that the current administration needs to be removed by the legal process, and the Constitution needs to be restored, and all those who oppose it by using the legal system, the judicial system, and the legislative system to thwart it should be removed, and if necessary, jailed, for sedition at least, and treason at worst. And there, I've said it. I've said my piece, and I'm pretty much done. So if you got any questions, hit me.
Hold on. I need my applause button. Where's my applause button? I got to call for somebody in the studio. Wait, I'm the studio. No, I was going to say this because I've written down notes because I want to follow up on Fukushima. I want to bring up Rose Jeremy with the JFK thing. But back to O'Reilly for a second. In the past 5-10 years, I can't remember any more times than in the past week, especially the past few days, where people like Bill O'Reilly, Larry Elder, Hugh Hewitt, some people on the radio that have a lot of good stuff to contribute, really pushing the single shooter theory that, no, this clearly was Lee Harvey Oswald. John, I'm telling you, I haven't heard this much single shooter trying to cram this theory down people's throats. I can't remember ever having this as much as I've had it this week. Have you noticed other voices around the country or maybe around the world trying to push the Lee Harvey Oswald thing again? It almost seemed like a flat earth. Like, really, the earth is flat, folks. Here's why the earth is flat. And I'm just listening to it, trying to follow him, but I know it's not accurate. Did you pick up on any of that yourself?
Yes, I have, and with my observation of that is that it's more of a fashion statement than it is any kind of a factual statement. Some of these people are so numbed by what is incumbent upon them to do to save and hold on to their jobs that they'll go along with anything. That's the one component. But the other part is even more dangerous, Brian. It is absolutely vital that this lone gunman theory be preserved, so that no further investigation is done, and so this hopefully eventually will go away. Because if it does not go away, when it begins to unravel through the works of not just Roger Stone but others, but I think Roger Stone's work is a seminal work. And listen, I don't get a cut from any of his book sales. There's nothing in it for me to push Roger Stone other than the fact that he's a fabulous writer, and that he was involved in every presidential election since '68, with the exception of the Bush-Clinton lineup in '92. If it ever comes to light how deep this conspiracy went, then what will also come to light is how all of the tentacles. It's not just this little group of conspirators. It's their tentacles from the head, like an octopus, that reaches out into all areas of our lives, and how what we have now, that we live in right now, has been brought about by that single domino that you mentioned allegorically earlier.
Right.
That was the beginning of what we have today. And people look around and go, wow, this is really screwed up. How did it get this screwed up? If you can look back far enough, it is said, with accuracy and clarity, you can then look forward and see not only where you are, but where you're going. And where we're going is straight into a Nazi-esque police state. We're already in a surveillance grid now. What are they so worried about? They're worried about us. They'll keep the fluoride in your water. They'll keep you being vaccinated with substances that cut your life short. They'll continue feeding you genetically modified organisms that rot you from the inside out and shorten your life, and they do. What they want is 20 to 30 years of productivity out of you, and then they want you to die. They don't want to pay your pension. They don't want to pay for your health care. They want you dead, just like the Chinese. We got a lot of really cheap labor over here. You still got me?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I'm
yeah,
following.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it. What they want are workers, very much like Metropolis, that old film that was made in the 20s. And if you want to see your judicial system, take a look at The Trial that was directed by Orson Welles. And just watch it. It's got Anthony Perkins in it. It's a slow movie. But if you just sit down and watch it, you will see that these people were true visionaries. They saw this stuff coming. Huxley, Orwell, H.G. Wells, they saw it coming. They were visionaries, just like Da Vinci was a visionary. And Jules Verne was a visionary. We have visionaries. In the old days, they called them prophets. But we don't call them prophets now. We call them visionaries. Prophet is a guy in a robe with a beard and a staff going around talking about biblical things. And as long as we're on the biblical stopping point, this is spiritual warfare. We share earthly bodies. We live an earthly existence on planet Earth. Here we are. But these things, we don't fight against each other. We fight against spiritual things. And those battles are orchestrated in what spiritualists call the heavenly realm. Now, that is, but language is important. Language is important because you may have a feeling. You say, oh, I have this feeling. I just can't describe it in words. That's correct. It's a feeling. But words can describe your thoughts. And therefore, your vocabulary will limit your thoughts. Look what's being done to our schools. Look how stupid our country is when stacked up, how uneducated this country is compared to countries that we're told, oh, they don't have a standard of living as good as ours. Well, yes, they do. Do you know that Mexico is ahead of us, actually, in many areas, including the banning of genetically modified organisms?
I caught that. What was that, a Budweiser plant or Miller Lite? It was one of the big breweries where they couldn't sell their product down in Mexico, and then, but they could sell it in the United States, but they banned GMOs, so the grains were different, so they had to make a new batch to send to Mexico from the U.S. I don't know.
It's
It's
unbelievable,
astonishing.
man. They have banned its presence from a certain range from schools and places where people gather. They want nothing to do with it, or the insecticides that attend it. They want nothing to do with it. The rest of the world is waking up, and it's time that somebody slapped us out of it. But somebody said last night, and I can't remember who, I think it was Ty. I think it was Ty Bollinger, said that you can wake up a sleeping person, but the one you can't wake up is the one who's pretending to be asleep.
It's a great line. That is a great line.
It really is. So, I mean, I know I'm coming off as probably overly passionate on this, but I'm telling you, we're getting short on time here.
Yeah.
And these people want a provocation so they can show us exactly what's going to happen.
Well,
let me tell you what you're going to get if you let these people get too far out of hand. This is one of the most horrible stories I've ever heard. And this will be rather graphic, but I'll try and contain it. But
let it rip.
oh, everybody, people have seen Saw 4 and Saw 10 and, Nightmare on Elm Street and everything else. So, but this is real. So this is not one of those scary but not too scary deals. This is scary. There were some women back in World War II. They were in their evening dresses, in their party dresses, and they were going to have a garden party out beside a place in France. And a flight of, I don't know if they were the Messerschmitt Bf-109s, everybody calls them Me-109s. It's not. It's Bf-109s, or maybe the Focke-Wulf 190, the FW-190. A flight of those aircraft saw them, came down, and just blew their guts and fragments of their party dresses all over the wall and flew away laughing. That's what you get when the dogs of war are unleashed on the citizenry. And it will damned well happen to our citizenry if we don't put a monkey wrench in this god-awful machine, and I mean soon.
Well, John, you
and
said...
I don't mean to be so awful and graphic, but I'm telling you, sure as hell, it's coming.
Well, you said it. Well, you know what? Listen, there was a time maybe a year ago where I almost got thrown down a flight of stairs by LAPD because I was standing at my friend's house with a glass of water. Mm-hmm. And I quickly found myself surrounded by pit bulls that wanted some blood. People that had a bad day and kind of wanted to take it out on me, and I could feel their breath on my face, begging for any excuse, and if I wasn't going to give it to them, they were just going to make one up. I felt it up close and personal, John, and you were just there, right there today when everything started getting out of hand, when you could feel everything starting to get provoked unnecessarily, as it did at this event that I was at. And when that happens, there's no other emotion you have left than a little bit of extra bluntness, a little blunt cartoonish honesty, a little bit more straight to the point, cut to the chase, here's what's going on. Because you said a few minutes ago that you have a little bit more life behind you than you do ahead of you, and that this is a spiritual war. But then again, and I thought this then, I jotted that note down, I want to get back to it, because if there's an eternal soul, and some people believe that there is, I'm one of those people, there's a lot more life ahead of me than there is behind me. And just like what William Wallace said, sure, go ahead, pretend this isn't your fight now, and you might have a few days. But, when you're called in front of your maker, what are you going to say? What is your excuse going to be for not trying to do something better? What's your excuse going to be? And I mean, you were just down there and you witnessed it firsthand that this was getting unnecessarily pushed out of control, and it seemed very intentional, false flag-ish, if you will. And you have every right to go off today, because I know that feeling of being absolutely frustrated and seeing it and realizing I could be in a cage by the end of the day if I'm still breathing.
Well, you're absolutely right. And the thing is that I mentioned this last night, and I mentioned it today, and I think Ron and Ty heard this. I said, I'm sensing a false flag moment here. And sure enough, it showed up. You must trust your intuition. Your intuition will not lie. It may not be 100% accurate, but it's accurate enough to keep you out of the way. And remember what it says in Scripture. The wise man, when he sees the approach of trouble, removes and hides himself. The unwise man remains and is punished. Another interpretation is destroyed. So if you think something's wrong, most probably there is something wrong. But it's not just about us. It's about those who will follow us. And I looked out at these people. They were just people. Everything from little kids, this little girl was there asking Alex Jones questions. She couldn't have been older than 6.
Nice.
And she was articulate and bright with her little video camera there. And I'm looking at these people going, these are the ones who are expected to work the 25 or 30 years and then die. These are the ones that take the bullet in one undeclared war after another. What is the meaning of this? How did we ever let it go so far? And I'll tell you, to turn it around, it's going to get messy, but we better, or it's going to get a lot messier.
Yeah, you can only ignore a health problem so long. Sometimes you need a surgery to set a bone straight or to remove something that burst. And, I mean, frankly, you know, I wanted to lead the show with that. Just hearing the gasps from that crowd, you know, at the Boston Symphony, hearing that, you know, they gasped in shock hearing the news first off, and then when they said we're going to play the funeral march. And like that was like the second wave, the second frying pan, the second baseball bat hitting the skull, where it dawned on everybody the weight and enormity of it actually happening. But here we are, 50 years later, today, 50 years ago, and there's still factions that believe this was a single shooter. It was just one crazy guy named Lee Harvey Oswald. So you've studied this a little bit. And I think, in fact, you were in Oliver Stone's JFK movie. Am I correct on that one?
Yeah, I narrate that stuff at the beginning. I was supposed to play Dan Rather, but all of that pretty much got cut out, and you will not see my credit on the movie, but that's me at the beginning talking about what happened to the president and going to Parkland. The priest has been called, and last rites have been given. That's me.
Well, John, how are we going to know? It's not like you have a distinguishable voice or anything.
Right. Smoking all that grapevine in the storm drains with my buddy Ricky back in the 2nd and 3rd grade. I think that's probably what did it.
No, I mean, but you've studied this a lot. Last week I did a show with my uncle, Bruce Engelman. He's a pastor. He's down in Dallas, Fort Worth as well. He wrote a book called Eternal Flame, and for him it was the Rose Cherami connection. It was the one who was in the hospital, got run over. She said, my boss, Jack Ruby, is going to kill the president. And, I mean, so are you in the LBJ camp then? Did Roger Stone's interpretation in his book, and he made a hell of a compelling case, and he's a connected guy that knows what he's talking about. I can attest to that. I mean, is that for you where you've kind of landed on it? Because I can only say this for me, John. I do not buy the Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone theory at all. But I'm not exactly certain what I do believe occurred. Have you come to a determination?
I would say that Roger Stone put enough dots on that canvas to create, for you to be able to connect and draw yourself one hell of a picture. And my first clue that Lyndon Johnson was insane is when I saw his picture in the Fort Worth Press as a child, and he was picking up his beagle by its ears. And I thought, what kind of a lunatic would do that? And that dog had a look on its face like, boo, oh my God, I'm being picked up by my ears. This is a 35-pound dog, and this nutcase is picking him up by his ears. Lyndon Johnson was a criminal, and I'm convinced after all of the stuff that I've collected and remembered over the years, to finally get a hold of Roger Stone's book. And by the way, he spoke with John Mitchell, who did a little bit of time. I think he did a couple of years of federal time for his involvement in the Watergate thing. Which was stupid. Mitchell told him, wait 50 years. Wait till the 50th anniversary before you put the book out. And Roger did. And it's extremely compelling. I mean, you really owe it to yourself to read this. I mean, it's one of those books that you're going to go, God, I've been reading for 4 hours. I need to put this down. But you won't want to put it down because there's just too much stuff. Nobody could make this up.
Well, let me phrase it this way then, in terms of something that was fairly recent, within the past year or so. The Benghazi situation, I've said from the beginning, either this was an intentional hit on Ambassador Stevens and they wanted him dead, running guns through, whether it was Turkey, Syria, Libya, whatever the case may be, or they were completely incompetent. One way or another, the regime doesn't really belong running the ship anymore. They kind of need to be relieved of their duty. With the JFK thing and the LBJ connection then, if that's really what it was, do you think that it was a conspiracy to take him out, that everybody was kind of on the same page, and by everybody I mean just the power players that could actually get it done, or do you think it occurred and then they found out what occurred and they had to cover it up to cover their ass because they were so incompetent to prevent it in the first place?
No, I think it was. I don't believe that any of these things happened by accident any more than, again, Lee Harvey. Let's go back to Oswald just a second, and then we'll bounce over to Benghazi.
Sure.
Lee Harvey Oswald was in the defector program. He was a radar technician. He facilitated the takedown of Gary Francis Powers' U-2 spy plane. This was in furtherance of giving Eisenhower problems, because Eisenhower was not a New World Order kind of guy at all. He tried to warn us. And if you go back and look at that speech when he talks about the military-industrial complex, the look on that man's face, it looked like he was scared to death, not for himself, but for the country. Now, bouncing over to Benghazi, if you understand that none of these things just happen, something's happened. No. There are some extraordinarily intelligent people. Now, granted, they're evil masterminds, but they are masterminds. And I believe that that was an arms deal, and I believe that Chris Stevens was taken out deliberately, and I see the former secretary's fingerprints all over it. I'll leave it at that.
And so here we are, John. This is it. 50 years later. And what do you tell to somebody like me, someone 34 years old, or somebody 20 years old, somebody who hasn't been through this, to give us some historical perspective? We got the domino clicking on the first thing 50 years ago, Vietnam into 9/11. But how do you? And clearly, I'm at least awake enough to be talking about this as much as I am. But to somebody that doesn't really think this affects him, to somebody that hasn't been almost thrown down a flight of stairs or almost in the middle of a riot like you were in Dallas today with Alex Jones and everybody else, how do you connect that to the people that don't think this relates to them? How do you wake them up, like you were saying? How do you shake them out of their slumber and let them realize this applies to everybody on the planet, not just the people that are frustrated enough to be talking about it and trying to fix things?
Brian, the only way that I can answer that question is this way. Back in the World War II days, everything was rationed, and a traveling salesman came through a rural part of West Virginia and pulled in and said, well, here are my ration coupons. And the guy said, coupons? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, never mind, mister. Just give me 4 brand new tires, will you? I don't know if that'll compute with a lot of your listeners, but the fact is that the only way that people can be unaware of what's happening now is by deliberate denial. The only way that gas station attendant was unable to know that there was gas rationing as well as rubber rationing in those days was that he didn't have an internet. So once you know, you know. Some people are so stubborn and in such a depth of denial, it doesn't matter what you show them. They will refuse it. They'll go off on you. They'll tell you you're an idiot. They'll get angry. And if they get angry, then you know that it's a self-induced state of denial, and you're not going to shake it out of them. But again, your fondness for firearms is only one mugging away. So I'm afraid somebody's going to have to get some of our citizens are going to have to get their rumps kicked by the very mechanism that they supported before they figure out that, oh, you mean it's not just those that we're ideologically opposed to that are going to be punished? You mean we're going to be punished too? Yeah, all of you.
Well, that's the free healthcare crowd. Yeah, I want free healthcare. Wait, I didn't know I had to pay for it. Well, I didn't know my premium was going up 2 or 3 times. I thought someone else was going to pay for it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Give me. How about John Kennedy?
Exactly.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
It's a dangerous message, John.
Extremely. And don't forget Voltaire. It's dangerous to be right when the government is wrong.
And you know what? You're one of the experts that I always go to. You're one of our phone friends, if you will, when it comes to the Fukushima thing. I want to bounce over to that. I know you have a meeting to get to, and I can't keep you all day like I usually do. But, talking about something that affects every one of us, like we were saying, whether they want to realize the dominoes clicking with JFK leading to 9/11 in the police state in 2013, Fukushima still has not been dealt with. And I saw you did another Fukushima special. I didn't get a chance to listen to that, but you bring on all the experts and get the info. And face it, John, you're a member of the New American Media, whether you want to be or not. You're part of the New American Media. You're the eyes and the ears on the ground in Dallas, and you're the guy talking to the experts on Fukushima. So please tell us, what do we need to know about Fukushima right now?
It's a disaster of biblical proportions. You are not being told anything. This stuff will infiltrate the food supply. There is an island, 100 million tons of rubbish on its way from Japan to the west coast of the United States. It is 3 times the size of Britain. And this is not some made-up fantasy, some BS biker acid trip story. It's a fact. The sea stars are melting. First, their innards pop out, and then they melt. And interestingly, I saw a little 2-line blurb about this phenomenon had been observed in North Carolina or Maine, maybe both. In fact, I think it was both. And then a week or so later, somebody who was on the program said, this stuff is making it to the East Coast too. And I went, does not surprise me. Now, it'll take a while.
Boy, hold on. Pause on it'll take a while. How in the hell is it getting to the East Coast?
I said that again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just saying, how in the hell is it getting to the East Coast?
Well, I suppose it's the wind currents. Look, we don't really know what's going on over there. And by the way, reactor 4 is the easiest one to take apart. If those things crumble or if they touch, a criticality could be reached, in which case there'll be an explosion. Some more of that stuff will be blown up in the air. Now, people will say, oh, radiation is everywhere. It's like, well, it's not ionizing radiation. There are all different kinds of radiation. What we're doing right now with our communication devices here now operates on electromagnetic radiation. It don't operate on ionizing radiation. That stuff will kill you. Now, it is possible to detox. It is possible to chelate this stuff out of your system, but you have to do it. However, in the case of tritium, if it gets into the water, you're done. Canada experienced a little bit of that trouble, and I haven't heard a peep out of anybody. The authorities are not going to tell you you are a stupid animal. You are too stupid to understand. We don't care about you anyway. And by the way, where's that tax money you owe us? That's all they care about. That's all they care about.
I think you're paraphrasing and channeling some George Carlin right there. They don't give a F about you. They don't give a F about you.
No, they don't. They don't. And, I think Carlin, I miss him so much because he had such insight, and he presented it in a way that was humorous, and we laughed at it. And then you go, what did he just say?
Yeah, the court jester. He was the only one allowed to tell the truth because he was telling jokes. Get it?
That's right, man. That's a beautiful analogy. It really is.
So you said there are ways to detox. Are there things that people can do to, because you can take the potassium iodide tablets, but is that okay to take even if you're in good health? Like, what are some suggestions to, because, look, I'm out here on the left coast. I'm here in Los Angeles myself. I've dipped my toes in the beach recently, or in the ocean recently. What are people supposed to be doing when we just have to assume the government is lying and not telling us how dangerous it is? Are there some tips and tricks?
If you don't object, Brian, I'm going to put Ty Bollinger on the line here, and he'll tell you because I don't know. Now, I may not have much integrity, but I got enough integrity to tell you when I don't know the answer to something. But I think Ty can bring something to the party. If you'd like to speak with him, I'll put him on right now.
Absolutely. Bring him in.
All right, here he is.
Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Living the dream, Ty. Welcome to the New American Media. Glad to have you on Agree to Disagree.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks. So, yeah, there's several things you can do for radiation. Cilantro, chlorella, spirulina, these are agents that will actually chelate. They will bind to radiation. They'll flush them out of your system. So those are 3 things that are pretty easily accessible for most people that they can begin to take that will help with radiation, to detox radiation. Now, this is not necessarily a detoxification here, but people need to be taking an iodine to fill up their thyroid gland, because if you don't take iodine, you're going to fill up your thyroid gland with radioactive iodine, which is coming from Fukushima. So that's something you can do that's a preventative to keep radiation from getting into your system, because your body will excrete it if it's not absorbed by your thyroid gland. So there's also different types of clays that you can intake, such as bentonite clay will absorb to radiation, and it will help your body to excrete it. So those are some pretty practical things. There's a lot of different products that are out there that contain combinations of herbs and minerals that will help you excrete radiation. But those are things that are pretty practical that folks can do that are pretty easily accessible.
Well, let me ask you this, Ty, because you could grab your salsa and you could throw some cilantro in it and make sure that you've spiced it up that way.
Yes, good.
Iodine. Now, I have some of those potassium iodide in case of danger, nuclear fallout, take these pills, but that's probably not what you're talking about, right? Like, what are some of the products that people can do, obviously, other than throwing cilantro on their salsa?
Sure. Let me give you
products.
two of the best products that you can take. One is an iodine product that we take, my family takes. It's called Iodoral, I-O-D-O-R-A-L. Just look it up. There's several websites that sell Iodoral. That is one of the best iodine products that you can take on a daily basis. Now, potassium iodide, that's for an emergency. If there's a nuclear explosion and you're in a close proximity, you take that. That's kind of an emergency measure. But this is Iodoral is something that you can take on a daily basis to keep your thyroid filled with good iodine so that you don't absorb the radioactive iodine. As far as the other agents such as cesium, tritium, plutonium, a lot of the other radioactive particles that are coming this way from Fukushima, you can take a product called Life One, Lifeone. I think the website is, I don't sell any of these products, by the way. These are just great products. Go to healthpro.com.dm. healthpro.com.dm. That's the website. The .dm means Dominican Republic. The reason that they're there is because that way they can tell the truth about their products without getting in trouble from the FDA, which is the Federal Death Administration. So if you go there, you can look up the product Life One. You can order it. It's a great radiation detoxifier.
Interesting. Now let me switch gears for a second back because I want to get another piece or two on the health stuff and talk like GMOs for a second. But before I do, just tell me about your experience today. And I know John gave us his side, but what was your experience being at Dealey Plaza today? Because John was making it seem pretty hairy that you could feel the change in the air, almost like you were in the center of a tornado before it was about to go down. What was your experience there?
Yeah, it was kind of an eerie calm. And John did say that. He said, man, there's something not feeling right about this today. And he said something to the effect that this would be a perfect place or a perfect timing for a false flag. So there was something that was there. It was definitely, you could feel it in the air. And it was really surreal when, we left right before this happened, when the DHS started, beating up the people for accessing the grassy knoll, which they were told that they could access. And then the DHS comes behind them and starts, billy clubbing them and hitting them. So that was just surreal to know that's really going on. We just missed the excitement. I'm kind of glad that we did because, as John mentioned earlier, what they were looking for was somebody to throw a punch to fight back so they could have an excuse to blow everybody away. Of course, that's my opinion, but I think that's what was going on. And nothing happened. People, they kept their calm. Even Alex Jones out there, he's a bulldog. He could have took 3 of them down with one swing. He didn't swing back, so nobody hit back. So they had nothing. And so the film footage is going to show that here's a bunch of peaceful protesters that weren't foul-mouthed, they weren't cursing, they weren't threatening, and then they were just needlessly attacked by a bunch of jackbooted thugs, including the children. The little girl that John was talking about was actually knocked off her father's shoulders, and then she was almost trampled by these thugs. It was really ridiculous, but it was more of a surreal feeling, I guess, to me than anything, to see that this is going on right here in these United States, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Supposedly, that's the land that we thought we lived in. Unfortunately, we were all living in a dream.
And that really is insane. And I told John, I don't think you had a chance to hear, but I was almost thrown down a flight of stairs by the LAPD for standing at my friend's home with a glass of water when a gathering was broken up, if you will. And it was insane. They sent in the pork chop. They had the helicopter. They had about 20 cruisers, and they were looking for a fight. And I know the difference between someone just doing their job and, all right, come on, guys, move along, versus I really want to crack some skulls today. And that was the vibe you were essentially getting down there, is what you're saying.
Well, I don't doubt that at all. I know personally dozens of stories that are similar stories. And until you've experienced it yourself, you can't really fathom that they would literally throw you down a flight of stairs for no reason at all, just so they could see you bash your brain on the bottom stair.
It's insane. That's insane.
Yeah.
And well, let me say this before we get John back, because you know a little bit about health, I would say.
I do.
The genetically modified foods. This is
yes.
I live out in California. I'm not sure where you're from, but Prop 37 failed. And John was just mentioning that, saying they want 30 years of productivity out of you, and they want you dead. They want you eating GMOs and drinking fluoride.
Yeah.
They want you to be productive for them and then die. Tell us about GMOs for a second. What aren't people realizing about GMOs?
Yeah. California Prop 37 failed recently up in Washington. Incentive 522, it failed. There's some good questions as to whether they really failed or whether those votes were rigged. But regardless, they didn't pass. Genetically modified foods, in my opinion, and I've got almost 17 years of health research under my belt at this point, I think they're the biggest threat to humanity. They are the only long-term study that has ever been done on genetically modified foods was done in the fall of 2012. It was done by a group of scientists headed by a guy named Seralini, who worked with the University of Caen in France. Now, they were experimenting on rats, which is the way that they do these genetically modified foods. It's the same rats that Monsanto experiments on. They were experimenting on rats. They found that at around 150 days after these rats had been fed this genetically modified corn that Monsanto produces, that they were developing enormous tumors. And I'm talking about enormous tumors that were bigger than their own bodies, and that they were dying of cancerous tumors, and that those that didn't die by the second to third generation, they were sterile. This was the only long-term study that's ever been done on genetically modified foods. Monsanto was doing the same experimentation on the same rats to show that they were safe. The only problem is they were pulling the plug at 90 days. The tumors didn't begin until 150 days, and they continued to a year if they lived that long. What this tells me is that they were pulling the plug on purpose too early, so that none of the detrimental effects of the genetically modified foods could be shown, and they could say, hey, these are safe. It's the equivalent to me of taking somebody, grabbing them by the hair, putting them under the water for 10 seconds, and then pulling them up and say, hey, look, water doesn't cause drowning. Well, you know what? You hold them under for 5 minutes, they're going to drown, right? Yeah. They didn't carry out the test long enough. And so with these genetically modified foods, I believe that they are the biggest threat to humanity because they are going to cause untold millions of cancers and cancer deaths. And those that don't die of cancer, they're going to be sterile. And so the goal of the globalists that are running things to depopulate the earth, to reduce the population by 80% down to 500,000, if you look at the Georgia Guidestones, that's their stated goal. They're going to be accomplished in a large part by genetically modified foods.
Okay, so one of the things that I do, I try to grow as much food as I can in my yard. I try to buy locally and organic. What other tips do you have for people to opt out of the intentional death syndrome? What things do you think people should avoid?
Yeah, that's a great question. What they can do, because a lot of people, they can't grow their own food, and maybe they can't even buy organic at this point. Let's say they just can't even find organic, but let's say that they can't do any of those things. The number one thing that you can do, if you are a mother or father of little children, quit buying processed foods. Okay, because if you look in processed foods, 75 to 80% of all processed foods contain genetically modified ingredients. They contain genetically modified corn in the form of high fructose corn syrup. They contain genetically modified soybean oil. They contain genetically modified cottonseed oil, and so forth. That's a huge percentage of your food that is contaminated by GMOs. If you can get rid of processed foods, just try to buy fresh foods, even if they are not organic. If you can buy fresh produce, and there's several different ways that you can try to wash off the pesticides, it's going to be a lot better for you than buying processed foods that are genetically modified.
Gotcha. Hey, I'll tell you what. I appreciate you jumping on real quick, and I would sure love to have you on when we can maybe devote maybe an entire segment to this. Maybe
sure. I'd love to do that.
Well, let me do this, and I'll talk with John off air, and we'll exchange our information. I'll connect with you then. But yeah, I mean, it's so important for people to realize the food component of what we're growing, what we're consuming, Fukushima, how it's affecting us, whether it's chemtrails or fluoride. I don't know how people could spend more time on twerking and Miley Cyrus and the Cleveland Browns. Yeah, that's my disease. I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. But, I don't know how people could spend more time on frivolous, irrelevant things as opposed to the things that could literally kill us or vastly improve our quality of life, Ty. So,
yeah, I agree. And in the words of Henry Kissinger, if you control the food, you control the people. And that's what they're trying to do, to control the people. One of the main ways they're trying to control us is through our food. And if they can keep us dependent upon them for the genetically modified food that we eat that's going to keep us sick and then eventually kill us, we're not going to be well. Like I said last night, it's not a healthcare system. It's a sickness perpetuation system. If they can control us that way, they got one up on us.
They say there's no money in a cure.
There's no money in the cure. There's money in treating.
Well, hey,
perpetually treating disease.
but you know what? There are ways to opt out of these systems, and I think that's what you've been spending a lot of your time on, and we've been a fan of yours for a while. So I'll talk with John off air. We'll try to bring you back over here to the New American Media sometime. And
Sounds good.
Hey, thank you so much for giving us.
I'd love to come on sometime. That's great. I appreciate talking to you tonight.
Hey, thank you so much. If you could toss John back on, that'd be great.
You bet. All right, take care.
Take care, Ty.
There, you heard it.
Hey, you know, look at that cameo. John, this is great. Who else do you have in your room? John, drum roll, please. Who
I got
else?
Ty's brother, but that's it. And listen, I don't want to be impertinent, rude.
No. Listen, you told us in the beginning.
Horses.
You told us in the beginning with the politeful, respectful bow. A meeting has been called, and there are things that need to occur. And you know what? You are our eyes and ears down there in Dallas, Fort Worth today. And like I said, I was almost there with Blake Wally with his Eccentric Perspective show. We almost drove in. Logistically couldn't make it work. But, I mean, is there any other thing you could leave us with? Any other sights and sounds and just general opinions then? And we'll let you get rolling here, John.
Just two things. Truth is the best medicine. It is a bitter medicine, and it's hard to take. But you must take it if you want to get better. Otherwise, you won't. And the last part is, if all of a sudden I drop off the scope, go to caravantomidnight.com. You'll find me. Yeah, and I'll talk at you tomorrow night.
Hey, that sounds fantastic, John. Appreciate your time as always. Stay safe down there in DFW area. Thanks for joining us on the program today, and we'll all tune into Coast to Coast AM. Listen to you. You're on tomorrow night, and who's your guest tomorrow? Who's on?
Mr. Constantine is on. We're going to talk about the covert war against rock, and Mr. Jones will be on with me as well.
Oh, well, that sounds fantastic. And give us one final pitch on Caravan to Midnight, the place where you have all of your goods and wares and supplies. Quick pitch.
It's sort of a radiation go-away site. We have very well-made Mazer instruments, Geiger counters. That's Mazer with an M-A-Z-U-R, instruments.com. If you go there to get some information on the products, be sure and put John B, just no spaces required, just John B as in Bravo in the promo box, and we'll throw in a little something extra just for people who go there. And there's stuff to keep EMF out of your house, all kinds of fabrics, stuff to keep fluoride out of your water, all kinds of things. You'll enjoy it.
Sounds good. Well, hey, stay safe, John. Thanks for joining us. We'll be talking again soon, pal, all right?
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Take care, John. All right, everybody. And there he is. There he goes, John B. Wells. And I've experienced it myself. When you end up in a situation and you have the police just kind of acting very antagonistic when there really isn't a need to be. That was exactly my experience about a year ago when I really thought it reminded me of when there were some loose pit bulls in my neighborhood and they were killing things. They ripped the throat out of my neighbor's dog in my front yard, and as we were trying to locate them, the three of them ended up triangulating myself and a neighbor. Before somebody in the street honked the horn, distracted them, and we ran inside. That's how it felt when we were outside of this event and the police were out there, and it was very frightening. And when you just smell something's wrong, when your gut's telling you it's time to go, I like what John was saying there, trust your gut. And over here at the New American Media, we don't think that things are right. We don't think that we're getting the full story. We don't think we're getting the truth. And it's not about thinking. We know. Our gut is telling us we know that we've been lied to. That's why we had to start the New American Media, because the old American media has failed us. It really has. It just seems like corporate propaganda. And that's fine. I mean, it's still good for certain things, and fine, consume a little bit of it. Fine, enjoy drinks in moderation. Don't drink to excess. Fine, consume some of the regular propaganda or the regular media, but if you really want to dig into things like Fukushima and why do you need a Willy Wonka gold ticket in a free speech zone to be a part of the JFK remembrance 50 years later, that there's a First Amendment. You don't need a ticket to enact your First Amendment. But there you have Ty Bollinger, and then you have John B. Wells saying, no, you need a ticket. Yeah, Alex Jones, he's getting punched. Okay. So we'll have to check out the videos. We'll have to disseminate our own information. And, maybe it was Lee Harvey Oswald, acted alone, the magic bullet theory. That did it. Or maybe it wasn't. So let's just keep digging into those things. I encourage all of you to check out the 4 places you can grab our information here at the New American Media. Please check out our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. On YouTube, It's youtube.com/The New American Media. Please click subscribe. We have about 2.5 years of, well, just check it out. Radio shows, music interviews, spirituality interviews, political interviews, videos. Just check it out. youtube.com/The New American Media. Most of that's embedded on thenewamericanmedia.com as well. On Twitter, we're at American_media_. Please follow us. And on Facebook, you'll have to search The New American Media with spaces in between and like our page. We put different stories in different mediums, just things come in different ways, and we just launch it, and we want you to be a part of our community. Let me do this real quick then. We have delayed our NBA scout, Zach Barris. He's going to come in and talk some sports with us. A lot of stuff going on for the Unhappy Hour. And I think it's time we go over to him. So let me just take a brief station identification break here on the TNAM radio network. We're going to kind of hit reset, and we're going to talk some sports. Really, special thanks. That was great. A great little cameo by Ty Bollinger. We're going to have to bring him in on a regular show sometime. Because I'm a really big fan of opting out of the processed foods and all the garbage. I wish I knew 15 years ago what I know now. I really wish I did. But it's all right. I got it now. I got it now. And we need some experts to come in and explain why genetically modified food might not be the best fit for you. Why organic might be a little better. Why, vaccines and fluoride and all that jazz might not be a good plan. But, after the heavy-hitting conversation we just had with John, because really, it's a William Wallace moment of what are you doing for your kids. Yeah, I think it's time to press pause and hit reset a little bit, make a hard pivot, and move over to some sports, because sports keeps me sane in between all the craziness of politics. My name's Brian Engelman. Thanks for joining us here on thenewamericanmedia.com. We're going to be right back. I appreciate each and every one of y'all. Thank you so much.